Thank you for calling the California Department of Public Health Vital Records. Your call may be monitored for quality assurance purposes.
We'll do a thing called freedom.
You gonna press the flash, Pappy? Do a little politicking? I'll press your petition. You little sumbitch. You don't tell your Pappy how to cut the electorate. We ain't one at a time in here. We're mass communicating.
Warning. You're listening to the Agenda 31 podcast with Corey Ibe and Todd McGreevy. Agenda 31 exposes government fraud, theft, and deception. Agenda 31 endorses peaceful enforcement of the Bill of Rights by the people of the several states. Agenda 31 explains how United States citizens have forsaken their capacity to protect their own rights. Corey and Todd engage with local, state, and federal government on powerful issues of identity, property rights, law, oaths of office, taxation, privacy, and more. Their approach is rooted in the very specific legal foundation of state citizenship. Listeners of the Agenda 31 podcast are challenged to take the lowest risks with the highest rewards. Your hosts want to know, what's your strategy to make a difference? Due to the unique division of political authority in the United States, U.S. citizens are residents in every state and should not attempt to copy the strategies employed by the hosts of the Agenda 31 broadcast without first consulting legal counsel. Enjoy!
You are going to change America in a way that usually only war and fluoride can. War and fluoride can. War and fluoride can.
It's time for us to become private central banking heretics, to stop believing that this is the way life is supposed to be, because it isn't.
The courts said that there are clearly two governments in each state. We have a state government and a federal government. Okay. The state government that we see today is a franchise of the federal government, as I mentioned before, by voluntary consent of the people, but that doesn't mean the original state government doesn't exist.
Self-determination isn't for everybody.
Well, that's exactly the whole point. The 14th Amendment protects U.S. citizens from the several states, but provides no protection from the federal government.
U.S. citizens have several different qualities. One, under Title V, they're considered federal personnel. You can trace back the foundation of their identity to a document the government owns.
Wake up! A state-issued birth record is government property.
You know what? There's going to be 50 different ways to skin this cat.
Today, we don't know. We're like a hotel that checks you in but never checks you out.
That's not courage. That's a mafia-style sit-down and divvy up what's good for the bosses.
You know, you're going to have to shut up or I'm going to have you arrested.
Hey, how does it feel to be a Republican right now?
It's a hoax. It's a big hoax. It's a little bit overreaching to think there's going to be 3,100 people trying to pay attention like we do.
Why don't we devalue Social Security numbers? Why not require financial institutions not to use Social Security numbers so that there's no longer the incentive to steal Social Security numbers?
The Social Security number is absolutely critical. We need them and we have to use them. But we have to treat them as an identifier.
Yes, we'll make slaves out of all of you.
Very much part of Agenda 21, in my humble opinion. And it's a ramp up to a United Nations September convention that's coming. It's going to be Agenda 21 on steroids.
Yeah, California is crazy.
It is.
I mean, it's out of control.
The U.S. sitting senator is suggesting using RICO laws to be applied to global warming skeptics.
We're not policing the world. We're not policing the world. We're not policing the world. No, we don't have a military-industrial complex.
Only a state citizen can travel around without license plates, without registration, and without a driver's license and not intend to break the law.
Because you can't have prosperity if you're constantly under the risk of a terrorist attack.
Who the government? Who the terrorists?
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Agenda 31. This is your co-host, Todd McGreevy, and I'm being joined by
Corey Ibe. Greetings, Todd.
Greetings, Corey. Thank you for tuning in live, everybody, on the agenda31.org/stream link. We appreciate that. This is Saturday morning. No, actually, it just turned afternoon here in Iowa in Scott County. It's about noon, almost a little after high noon, and it's Saturday, March 5, 2016, and you're listening to episode 71 of Agenda 31. And, of course, Agenda 31 is the namesake of our show and of our website. and we ask the question, what's your strategy to make a difference? Celebrating free lives that matter, Corey, here in Scott County. Free lives
Wonderful.
matter.
Yes, they do matter.
We'd like to promote that the free lives matter instead of the other memes that are out there. We promote that living free should matter, and that being a U.S. citizen isn't all it's cracked up to be. And Corey, you're coming at us from L.A., correct?
Yes. Waving a hand from the left coast here.
The L.A. connection, and you can follow Corey on Twitter at TubeBuzzer, T-U-B-E, Buzzer, TubeBuzzer. Is that because you hit a lot of last-minute shots in grade school on the basketball court?
No, you're asking about what TubeBuzzer is?
Yeah.
You remember AOL a long time ago?
I do. Yes.
So, they would send out those free discs, just like candy.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And you could sign up for free. You remember that?
No, they were everywhere.
So they were everywhere, but you needed a new screen name. And I, every time I'd try and think of a screen name, it was taken. And so I enjoy fishing, and I happen to have a book of fishing lures near me. And I looked in the book and just saw a TubeBuzzer, which is a type of fly fishing lure. And I went, I bet nobody uses that as a screen name. And I've been right.
I got to get a picture of that. What is it? A fly fishing lure?
Yeah, it's a type of fly fishing lure.
All right, I got to get an image of that. That's fascinating. Cool. I never knew that story. Thank you for sharing. Apparently, Corey, we have some news to report. I according to Sir Longrock, one of our avid fans and followers on the tweeters, he's at LRockHQ. That's his Twitter handle. Sir Longrock, a No Agenda member of the No Agenda Roundtable. He's a knight of the No Agenda Roundtable and a producer there. He's apparently in charge of a stream, a newish stream, the Radical Radio Network, the RRN.
Yes.
Yeah, with Christopher Cantwell. And I've actually listened to Cantwell's stuff before. He has another site called RadicalAgenda.com. And he has a good podcast. He's very active, and he holds nothing back. It looks like he's also not just a keyboard cowboy. I think if you go and look at his site, you'll see he's engaged in going to the State House and dealing with the overlords directly. So we got to give him props for that.
Awesome.
Yeah. And apparently he's got a new stream he's trying to promote, and Sir Longrock's helping him, I think. I don't know all the details, but according to the tweet, we're going to be rebroadcast on that network on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6 to 8 a.m. Eastern Time. So an early morning gig there, Tuesdays and Thursdays for the Agenda 31 rebroadcast. And you might be listening to us on the No Agenda stream on that playback, and we appreciate you tuning in there as well. That's the home of the live broadcast of the No Agenda show with Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak. Excellent media assassins. And Corey, I want to get started on the show just to right off the bat play a clip that I heard on No Agenda, just to be completely derivative here. But I think you'll find this extremely fascinating. Another podcaster out there, this is Share the Love Day here about podcasting. The Tech Syndicate, TEK Syndicate. Curry got this sent to him, and he played this. And this is with regards to encryption. Encryption's in the headlines, right? This is the recent hearing with Apple and all that fun stuff. And these guys are reminding listeners that encryption's been around a long time, and wait till you hear what they say encryption is also should be considered as.
Justice Scalia just died, and he was sort of famous for saying that the Constitution occasionally does protect criminals just as it protects ordinary citizens. And if this goes through, it is a breathtaking expansion of power. I think that, historically encryption has been classified as munitions. When we're talking about Lotus Notes, in that era, encryption was classified as munitions. Technically, it still is classified as munitions. Intel, an Intel subsidiary, was fined for giving strong encryption to some foreign country that the U.S. doesn't like, which is the first action like that the State Department has taken in forever. And that was in 2014. And so I guess technically encryption is still classified as a type of munitions. But our founding fathers, the fathers of the United States, used very strong encryption that was basically unbreakable in the day. for private communication and private correspondence to ensure that. And so I think it's not too far off the mark to classify encryption as munitions. But I think classifying encryption as munitions also gives you Second Amendment protections. As a citizen, I have the right to arm myself with encryption.
Maybe as an Article 4 citizen you do.
Well, that's the whole thing that I was thinking the entire time was, as an Article 4 citizen, of course, but a 14th Amendment citizen, I really would be quite surprised if Apple were to win, win this argument long term. I think it is a question of jurisdiction.
On the Article 4 on the 14th Amendment plantation, also known as domiciling in the District of Columbia, Apple is not going to prevail. They will.
Yeah, I mean that's my prediction.
Yeah, and by that we mean that you're right. You as a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen, your rights are modifiable, and you do not have the protections that these guys on the tech syndicate were talking about. Technically, those rights exist. I've never heard that before. Had you, about the encryption being munitions?
Oh, yes.
I've never heard that before. That was fascinating.
I have, yeah. In fact, carrying encrypted messages is considered a form of battle. I remember reading this somewhere. I think it was part of the Geneva Convention or something, reading a long time ago about encrypted messages literally being something that would make you a combatant in war.
Oh, yeah. I did a little more research on this, and that's why I wanted to riff on it, because they just touched on it on the No Agenda show briefly, and I think this is worth a little deeper dive. So I appreciate the nod to this direction. Who knew that there's the National Security Agency, Corey, has a division that's called the Center for Cryptologic History. Center for Cryptologic History. And in 2013, a guy named Ralph Weber published it's a 222-page document. It's called, the PDF file name is masked, MASKED _dispatches.pdf. I'll try and send you the link here. I should have sent it to you, but it's a 60 meg download, 220 pages, and so it's a pretty expansive tome. And it says Mass Dispatches, Cryptograms and Cryptology in American History, 1775 to 1900. Looks to be pretty compelling reading. I would also, I haven't had a chance to fully digest this, but he said this is an examination of codes and ciphers as they figured in American history prior to the 20th century, prior to the era of wireless or radio communication and the advent of electronic age. It forms a backdrop for understanding modern cryptology and the role of cryptology, notwithstanding its traditional secrecy in the growth of this nation. Our guide is Dr. Ralph Weber of Marquette University, whose 1979 United States Diplomatic Codes and Ciphers, 1775 to 1938, established him in the forefront of students of this arcane subject. So I did a word search for the word munition in the document, and it didn't come up as munition, but ammunition came up twice in the or several times in the document. And I'm trying to go to it real quick. And yeah, code designed by George Washington's director of Secret Service, Benjamin Talmadge, based on Entick's spelling dictionary. So they had a series of numbers that meant words.
Yeah, the framers had some really interesting cryptologic strategies, I think is the right term.
Mm-hmm.
They would, in some cases, they would actually write up something that would be an encrypted message just by looking at it. So one word would mean something different. But then within that, you would have on the other end imagine like just a sheet of paper with holes cut out of it, and you lay that sheet of paper over the message, and then certain words would show up through the holes, and that was the actual message. So it was a double encrypted system that you'd have to have not only the key to decrypt what the words meant, but then you would also have to have a physical hard copy of I think they used paper or brass or something sometimes, but you just lay it over and then you'd be able to read the words. I'm not describing it correctly.
The filter, the technical filter.
Yeah.
It would help decode it. That's fascinating, because if you compare that activity to decipher the message that you just explained, that's fairly rudimentary or simple compared to cracking the so-called code on an iPhone. It seems like the physical. I mean, if you applied the coercion that the FBI is trying to apply right now to Apple to somebody that had those two layers you just spoke about, like what would be the request? The FBI would be saying he has to proffer up that piece of paper with the holes in it and show us how to use it. Right? That would be the compelling action that they would need to understand the document. And they're right there. I mean, where do your rights begin and end is right there. Well, why do I have to have your papers secure? It was part of the whole protections that were, codified in the Bill of Rights.
And I would say that as far as the argument that the government is making Apple, do their work for them, I think that's already been well established in other areas. As far as taxes are concerned, the government has been successful at making people collect taxes for the government, and you're not paid for it. So if you're an employer, you have to collect taxes. If you're a business owner, you have to collect sales taxes, all kinds of stuff that you have to do that you don't get paid for. And, you have to produce all the records, all the documents. And on that 14th Amendment plantation, it's all the government's property anyway, because it's all in the United States. It's their property. So I think this is really going to be fascinating to see, what happens with this. I've been really interested in cryptography and encryption, and have been able to establish a couple of with a few people around the country, I've been able to establish methods of at least text and email encryption that is relatively secure as far as the messages being sent back and forth. When you look at our Google messages, emails, or even our text messages, it's just a bunch of gobbledygook. And I like it. I mean, I'm now, I gotta give props to Adam Curry, because he posted his public key for email up, and I'm a slow learner. It took me 6 months to figure out how to make it work. But now that I understand the encryption, it is incredibly important. I mean, you just feel naked when you send messages on email or text messages, phone calls. It's like a postcard. Anybody can read it. It's really I really appreciate being able to send things encrypted. It's not. It doesn't mean that the NSA can't crack it or anything, but at the very least, Google doesn't have just an open book list of all the communications that I have.
Yeah, I think it's smart. I need to start using it as well. I mean, not that anything I have to say is particularly, highly top secret, but then again, when we're talking about, we are adversaries. We are upfront that as Article 4 state citizens, we do consider the government an adversary, not an enemy, but an adversary. Right. And in an adversary relationship, you want to keep your strategies private.
Exactly.
And otherwise, the adversary is going to use everything at their advantage to overcome those privacy strongholds to gain their advantage.
And you see that adversarial relationship all over the place. In baseball, you have coaches that give signs. Football coaches have all of their strategies are secret. They don't just openly say what they're doing, because then the other team will know exactly what you're doing. But in football, you need the other team. If you're the only team in playing, nobody's gonna be interested in the football game. Article 4 citizens are adversaries with the federal government, but they need the federal government. It's not like you're trying to put it out of business or crush it, or that they're an enemy to destroy. Not at all. They're just an adversary in a political game that was created by the framers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Apple stuff happening right now with the FBI and the hearings, and I mean, if you listen to the No Agenda show, you'll get a deep dive and just go to their archives and you'll see all kinds of stuff about it. They do a great job. I happen to think that Ron Paul, and one of his recent blog posts at ronpaulinstitute.org summed it up very well, short and sweet. And part of what he wrote, and I'll put a link to his posting at the show notes at agenda31.org. This one's entitled "First They Came for the iPhones" is the title of his blog. He writes in part, "Let's not forget that this new, more secure iPhone was developed partly in response to Ed Snowden's revelations that the federal government was illegally spying on us. The federal government was caught breaking the law, but instead of ending its illegal spying, is demanding that the private companies make it easier for it to continue. Now, I think we would take technical issue with Dr. Paul that those that they were spying on were 14th Amendment citizens, and it wasn't illegal.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the challenge. And we're led to believe.
Morally speaking, it was illegal.
Morally
but
speaking.
Legally.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, that dichotomy I'm talking about is never been more articulated than with Obama when he gave this speech. And by that dichotomy, I mean United States, we contend that the powers that be are read in on the dynamic we're talking about here, that U.S. citizenship is what you want to make as government overlords. You want to make U.S. citizenship and that birth certificate that goes with it and all the trappings around U.S. citizenship, you want to make that look as enticing as possible. You want more people to consent to give up the protections that the Constitution provides by becoming a U.S. citizen than not, because therefore you have control of them. And that there's a duality with these sworn people who've taken an oath of office. While they've sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution, they're let off the hook 99.9% of the time because the presumption is accurate. The person they're dealing with is not an Article 4 state citizen of the several states. And in this clip, Obama spells it right out.
And we also recognize that most of the guns used to commit violence here in Mexico come from the United States. I think many of you know that in America our Constitution guarantees our individual right to bear arms. And as president, I swore an oath to uphold that right, and I always will.
In America, he said. He switched from United States at the beginning to America.
But at the same time, as I've said in the United States, but at the same time, as I've said in the United States, but at the same time, as I've said in the United States, I will continue to do everything in my power to pass common sense reforms that keep guns out of the hands of criminals and dangerous people, that can save lives here in Mexico.
It's just some of the most, I just think it's so in our face right there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If you take that word "at the same time" out of that sentence, it would say, in America, I swore an oath to uphold the Second Amendment and always will. But in the United States, I will work to pass laws, blah, blah, blah. That at the same time breaks up the thought process to get you off the bean, but he's technically stating exactly what we're talking about.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's one of my favorite clips that you got. That it just straight up says,
well,
if people need some confirmation about what we're talking about, how about from the president?
Yeah, and I got to give again. Sorry to sound so no agenda referential here, but I did hear that clip on their show, so I got to give them props too. And again, they didn't go into what we're talking about. They just brought it up at kind of the hypocrisy that Obama was down in Mexico saying, "Yeah, we brought the guns in," just kind of in their face, and we know they came from us. Sorry,
right?
That was what they were heading on. But anyway, just a fascinating evidence, and I need to use that clip more often, or maybe isolate a little more so people understand. But I'll put a link to Ron Paul's piece up there as well. Encryption is munitions. I'm fascinated by that. Fascinated by it because the Second Amendment that protects the right to bear arms, that includes munitions. So, isn't that fascinating that your use of encryption should be protected by the Second Amendment?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in the context of which I read that was, I recall it being something to do with the Geneva Convention. So if you're in a battle or war, or there's a war condition going on, then that would apply. But I would suggest that, Todd, if you and I are starting up a business as Article 4 citizens, and you're in a state that is foreign to California, you're in Iowa, I'm in California, that we should be able to communicate in a manner that it doesn't involve the government. The government has no interest in our communications as far as establishing a business. And we would certainly have the right to speak to each other however we want. So if we want to speak to each other in a manner that's gobbledygook to everyone else, I would say that is a secured right. And but again, on the 14th Amendment plantation, at the same time in the United States, that's something that they would be able to come down on you pretty hard for. And I have a feeling the government is going to prevail when it comes to Apple.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to go back to this clip too. It's Michael Hayden, and it just is it's just check. He was a former head of CIA and NSA, and just listen to this one.
I mean, for our purposes, it's about unreasonable search and seizure. What constitutes reasonableness when it comes to the sovereign authority gathering data or information or things from the citizens of the republic that form us?
The citizens of the republic that form us.
Yeah.
That's some doublespeak, isn't it?
That is doublespeak.
And we go back and forth even today. I was struck was the word I was going to use, but I think the right word is stunned. After the Boston Marathon thing, and we later learned that the Tsarnaevi were surfing jihadist websites, and a significant fraction of our population, and not all of them wearing tinfoil.
A significant fraction of our population. He's trying to say, and you talk about like playing the biggest hearsay card. He's going to play this hearsay card to justify what he's saying next. A significant fraction of our population.
In their heads, a significant fraction of our population says, "Why weren't you tracking those guys on the web?" As if it was a good idea for the nation's security services to be aware of what permanent legal residents and United States citizens.
Permanent legal residents and United States citizens. That's a pretty specific classification, wouldn't you say, coming from this guy?
Yeah, it certainly doesn't encompass Article 4 citizens in that statement.
No.
Were actually doing when they were doing web surfing. So we kind of go back and forth. How we decide that what constitutes reasonableness is actually a product of the totality of circumstances in which we find ourselves in history.
So you've heard me use the term discretionary, capricious, and arbitrary many times about how the overlords conduct themselves with regards to 14th Amendment citizens. I think he just summed it up right there. Just, it's a totality of the circumstances we find ourselves in. Really?
Is actually a product of the totality of circumstances in which we find ourselves in history. In other words, I know this is fact. What I viewed as reasonableness on the morning of September 10th, I viewed in a very different light on the afternoon of September 11th at the National Security Agency, and I actually started to do different things. And I didn't need to ask Mother May I from the Congress or the President or anyone else. It was within my charter. But in terms of the mature judgment of what's reasonable and what's not reasonable, okay, the death of 3,000 countrymen kind of tilted me in a direction over here, perfectly within my authorities, but a different place than the one in which I was located before the attacks take place.
Different place. There's a lot there.
There is a lot there, and something that's that is fascinating. This is. Quote, I think it comes from 1215.org if anybody's ever been on that website. It's a great website. The gentleman that runs it, his name escapes me at the moment, but he wrote a great article about the government when it tries to use an emergency to take away constitutionally secured rights or as a reason why certain rights should be restricted. His article brings up that, hey, the Constitution was founded in an emergency. The Declaration of Independence was written while the King of England was just violating people's rights regularly. And so it wasn't a time where they said, okay, well, we'll put this Constitution together, or put the Declaration of Independence together, from which the Constitution derives its authority. it wasn't like, well, okay, we're going to write up this Declaration of Independence, refer to our secured rights, but because there's an emergency, now the king's not in charge, we're in charge, and we're just going to go through your homes and do it. It just is a great article. I'll try and find the link to it.
Interesting. I see what you're saying. Like,
yeah, whenever you hear that, the government say, "Oh, there's an emergency, we got to suspend your rights," bullshit. The Declaration of Independence was founded in an emergency.
The guarantee of a Republican form of government was established in the midst of an emergency. That's why it was established.
Exactly.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very compelling way to look at it. I've got 1215.org pulled up. I've been to this site before. It's been a long time. I've got it marked. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. And if you find the article, let me know, Corey. We'll get it up there. Where to even start with regards to some of the nonsense that you've encountered since our last show?
Well, I just posted the letter on the base camp that I got on yesterday. This letter came yesterday from the Secretary of State, and it was really interesting. I actually feel bad for the woman that had to write this letter.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yes. I'm going to put it
okay,
up.
cool.
I'm going to put it up at the blog right now while you're explaining it.
So normally, and we've talked about this on the show ad nauseum about getting oaths from the proper oath holder. And a couple of weeks ago, the director or the commander of internal affairs for the entire state of California at the California Highway Patrol sent me a letter and basically just unilaterally declared that an oath of office on file with the Highway Patrol is a private document and that they're just not going to disclose it. And along with that, I also the hearing or a tow officer in Sacramento, I forgot his name, but in dealing with my car, he straight up told me that the CHP doesn't follow the Constitution; they follow statute, which doesn't surprise me. And then when I pointed out the statutes that I attempted registration for the car, he said, "Oh, well, that's not the one we follow." I mean, it was just their brains are Swiss cheese when you start calling them on what they're doing. And it's not surprising, the information from this letter, it's not surprising that it was written the way it was written. And because normally, if you were to go to anybody, any entity that holds an oath, if it's a city clerk, a county recorder, or the Secretary of State, if you ask for a document, they will give you a certificate of, they'll either call it a certificate of no record. You just basically ask them for something and they say, we don't have it. And then they can give you a certificate for that. Well, the way this woman wrote it up, and I spoke to her on Friday, and, the Secretary of State's office, I always try and maintain a friendly relationship. They're not the linebacker on the opposite team that you have to really hit hard. They're people that you have to work with, and they're supposed to be a little bit more neutral. But the way this was written, I mean, I dare say that this woman came very close to making a legal determination, because she wrote here, California Highway Patrol officers' oaths are not required to be filed with the Secretary of State. Therefore, we have no documents responsive to your request. I mean, she just states that out of the blue, just like, I'm going to make this claim, and she provides absolutely no references for that at all. And then the very next sentence says the California Secretary of State houses oaths of office pursuant to California Government Code Section 1363. Now, I found this really fascinating. You sent me an email about that code. It's incredibly clear that, in fact, let me just pull it up real quick. I'll pull up the government code, and I'll just read that directly. Because this is not a very complicated code. I was really excited when I found it, because when I first found this, I was trying to figure out, where do judges keep their oaths? Because I went everywhere trying to find it. And the very first oath I ever pulled was of a commissioner at the Orange County Superior Court's office. And the lady who ran human resources there She had worked there for 28 years and told me no one had ever requested an oath of office from her the entire time. And and I still was, what's that?
That's amazing.
It is amazing. Well, it gets even more amazing with regard to the Highway Patrol, because there's 30 million people in California. And, there's been many lawsuits against the CHP for abuse of power and so forth, and just regular traffic tickets, everything else. Well, let's read this. It says in California Government Code Section 1363, A, unless otherwise provided, every oath of office certified by the officer before whom it was taken shall be filed within the time required as follows. 1. The oath of all officers whose authority is not limited to any particular county in the office of the Secretary of State. When I found that, I learned that, well, judges, they can serve. If you have a judge who's in San Diego, he could be called to serve in Sacramento the next day. And they can serve anywhere in California. So their authority is not limited to any particular county, even if they're just operating in a county. And that was how I started to contact the Secretary of State. And when I called the Secretary of State's office, nobody knew where to go. All the different divisions I talked to said, nope, we don't have it. Nope, that's not us. That's not us. Until finally I'd checked off enough boxes that I got to the notary department of the California Secretary of State. And lo and behold, the notary division is where they hold the oaths of office. Now, the California Highway Patrol, they're very proud to say any code, anywhere, that they can cover anything in California. You can have a highway patrol officer begin to patrol the highways in San Diego, and by the end of the day, he's in Sacramento. And it doesn't matter what county he's in, he can enforce the law. They're not limited to any particular county, and they're officers of the state. So I just found this letter to be fascinating that, on one hand, she's saying that, they don't, it says the California Secretary of State does not file oaths of office for the California Highway Patrol. I don't understand where they get that from. And so, where we're at.
She cites the code, trying to act like it's backing her up, but it just proves that she's inaccurate.
Yeah. And honestly, when I talked to her yesterday, it took a while for her to actually take my phone call, and I could hear in her voice, like I've talked to enough government officials. I get the sense of when somebody is nervous, they don't know what is happening. They don't like the position they're in. And they generally default to being very combative and interruptive. And one of the things they love to say is, I'm not going to argue with you. Meanwhile, all they're doing is arguing. Because the only thing I was calling up for was to say, hey, this letter does me no good. I can't take this letter into court and show that there's no oath of office on file, because you've made a legal determination that you're not an attorney, that the highway patrol officers are not required to file their oath. That's just crazy talk. So I was very nice to her and trying to keep the conversation, again, trying to win her over to just doing her job. And the only thing I was requesting was a certificate of non-filing, or certificate of no record, or whatever the California Secretary of State offers. And she did say that she'll get that to me. And then her final comment, because by the time I spoke to her, it was 4:50 on Friday afternoon. She said she'll get that to me on Monday. But
with a rule of law and an atmosphere of ordered liberty.
Yes, yeah. Now this, when I got home last night, Todd, I could hardly sleep last night. This is, when you think about how serious this is actually an existential threat, in my opinion, to the very existence of the institution of the California Highway Patrol. And having not filed their oaths, I contend that they're not legitimate as far as being able to enforce law. And, judges have their oaths. I've pulled plenty of judges' oaths. I will get the oath of the judge who will be handling the hearing for the case here in L.A. I'm going to put his oath on the record. And right next to that, I'm going to have a certificate of no record found, or whatever the Secretary of State provides, for the officer who is who issued the citation.
He's got no authority to be driving around pulling you over.
Exactly. Here's a guy with no oath pulling me over saying you don't have a driver's license. It's amazing. But beyond just me, this is a potentially, I think, could be a constitutional crisis. And here is where I want to really thank all the listeners, all the supporters of No Agenda, all the people who have, sent in funds and provided support, everything. Talk about bang for your buck. The entire highway patrol I believe, is going to have to make a decision. Either every single officer needs to file their oath en masse. Now, we had that happen with Irvine. Now, the city of Irvine, they filed every single police officer's oath when I brought legal action against the chief of police. And the only one who was supposed to file his oath was the chief of police. The police officers, they're not officers of the state. But highway patrol officers are officers of the state. And if they file their oath, if every single officer files his oath on a certain date, then that creates a record that anybody can find. And if I were sitting in jail, if I had a drunk driving ticket, if I had any type of citation that didn't involve a harmed party, that, you're sitting in jail for getting, you get pulled over for a suspended license or something like that, but you haven't hurt anybody, so there's not really a real victim. I think that if you were a criminal in the sense that there's a harmed party, the oath of office is really going to be immaterial in this case because you have a harmed party. There's an actual victim. But if there is no victim, if you're in jail, if you've had some sort of criminal action against you, and the crime is purely prohibitum malleum, it's just a crime because the state says it's a crime, then I think, I certainly would use the idea that, hey, the highway patrol did not have the authority, whatever officer that was, did not have the authority to enforce that law. It's kind of like if you were, going to get a driver's license and you do the test, you fill out all the paperwork, you get everything done, but you don't turn the application into the DMV. You're still not licensed. You can bring in all the other paperwork to court and say, look, I filled out the license, I took the test, I read the book, I followed all the rules. No, you still don't have a license.
You're in for surprise. You're in for a shock.
I think the CHP's in for a surprise, man. If they can't show these oaths of office, it's wow. Now the one of the potential chinks in your armor here, as I'm hearing you explain this, Corey, is because I'm looking at the code regarding the filing oaths, and we're in 100% agreement that it says right there that they have to be filed if they have if their authority is not restricted to a single county. All right, it's right in there. You can't. We'll put a link to it at the show notes. It's right there. But you made an important statement that CHP, California Highway Patrol, are officers of the state, and that's a difference. It means they're a peace officer, right, with arrest authority.
Well, yes, an officer of the state is different than someone who's not an officer of the state. For example, when the Rossum Foods event was happening and LAPD was involved in serving a search warrant on Rossum Foods, where they just basically took a milkman's money and his food and everything like that, dumped it in the street through the health department.
Raw milk,
yes, raw milk. And grass-fed beef and $700,000 worth of food that they just threw in the street right in front of a homeless shelter, right in front of people who could use food, would like to have a nice meal. It's pretty disgusting what they did. Now, LAPD they were involved in a search warrant. So in working with the parties involved at Rossum Foods, they went down to the county recorder's office, and a couple of the LAPD officers had their oath filed at the county recorder's office, and a few of them didn't. So clearly there was somebody was wrong. And to LAPD's credit, I definitely give them credit for this because they owned the mistake, they admitted to it, and then they fixed it. But fortunately, their mistake was, hey, they filed their oath there, but they weren't supposed to, so it's not really a valid filing. It's just a ceremonial filing. And they openly said that LAPD officers are not officers of the state. And the LA County Recorder's Office changed behavior in that they will not allow an LAPD officer's oath to be filed at the County Recorder's Office. Now, that's really important because a sheriff, their oath is filed at the County Recorder's Office. Now, the difference is a sheriff's deputy, he can still arrest you if there's no sheriff. If there's no sheriff in office, the sheriff's deputy has inherent arrest authority to be able to arrest someone, whereas LAPD officers themselves, they're really security guards for the corporation, and their authority to arrest comes from the chief of police. The chief of police is required to have his oath at the county recorder's office because the chief of police is an officer of the state, and the chief of police, it's his authority that all the LAPD officers operate off of. So when they arrest you, it's really an extension of the top guy, and the LAPD officer would not be arresting you under his own personal authority. Maybe I'm not describing it correctly. I hope I'm making it clear. Yeah. So if somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I'm an LAPD officer and I'm going to arrest you," part of being able to determine whether or not he really is an LAPD officer and he really is operating on the authority of a chief of police is you go down to the county recorder's office and you make sure the chief of police has his oath on file. Then to make sure he's an LAPD officer, you would contact Human Resources and get a copy of his oath from Human Resources. That's how it would work with LAPD, and then you could verify that the people that you're dealing with are legitimate government actors. If you're dealing with somebody who claims to be a sheriff's deputy and they come out and they're going to just take your stuff, arrest you, or whatever's happening, you want to make sure that they are a legitimate government actor, that they're not just some foreign power who has brought people in who are now dressed up like government officials, but they are not. They're actually imposters. The way to determine that is you go down to the county recorder's office and you find out, hey, is this guy, does he have an oath of office on file? Now, the oath of office being on file is not the end-all, be-all to determine whether or not somebody is a legitimate government actor. It's an indication. And if somebody goes and files an oath of office and they have not been properly appointed, now that oath becomes a felony, so that it becomes a false document. So it's very serious. If you're not if you're going to go out there and pretend, because people do that all the time, you hear of people, putting on police-like attire and then pulling people over and stuff like that. It's just a psychological defect phenomenon, I think, of some people who desire to have this control over other people. They'll impersonate a police officer. And so these checks and balances have been put in place to be able to determine whether or not somebody is a legitimate government actor. Now, one thing that struck me about the Highway Patrol is if you call their office, you'll hear them over and over, and all of their letters that they've sent, they always, point out that they're an internationally accredited organization. It's an international organization.
Oh.
That combined with no oaths being filed at the Secretary of State, that's kind of scary. So if they're an internationally accredited organization, that means somebody who is not within the jurisdiction of the United States of America is now accrediting the Highway Patrol. The Highway Patrol is really proud of it. So they have some sort of control there. What if, and this is
sounds like Agenda 21 to me.
Agenda 21, or what if it's, to use, pick a country that's an adversary. What if Iran or Russia or any adversary of the United States is able to bring people in, fund them, and start dressing them up as government actors, say Highway Patrol? And nobody's filing their oaths at the county recorder's office. No, there's no way to know where those people's loyalties are at, and there's no way to hold them accountable without that oath. And what if an internationally accredited organization over a period of time everyone begins to follow. They begin to say, well, we don't follow the Constitution. We only follow the codes. And then they go, well, we don't follow that code because our boss doesn't want us to. And our boss happens to be somebody in a foreign country. We already have Redflex. That's a foreign corporation that handles the street automated red light cameras all over the place, where half the money that gets paid goes off to a foreign corporation. The framers significantly warned everyone that, a republic such as ours is uniquely susceptible to foreign influence and foreign governments. And it's not hard to think of a foreign government being able to spend money on funding people to be able to come in who are loyal to them, working within the Highway Patrol or any other organization. So right now, I really do think that we have a constitutional crisis in California because the Highway Patrol, if they file all these oaths like they're required to, think of all the thousands, hundreds of thousands of cases that could cause a problem for, that people would have a legitimate reason to say, I am not guilty. You had no authority to impose these laws on me.
And in the low risk, high reward universe, we try to put around ourselves, Corey, because we do have some say in what our environs are still. We have a modicum of ability to create the universe we live in. You took the low risk, little higher risk, but much higher reward action when you found out the chief of police of Irvine had no oath of office on file and he was out of school, and you filed a restraining order against him.
Yeah, and one thing I learned about that was don't file a restraining order in state court. You'll lose. But ultimately, the battle was what I learned from that was that these state courts are the wrong court. If you're an Article 4 citizen, I'm going on to the opposite team's, I'm going into the opposite team's management and saying, hey, I need some help. It's the wrong court to be in. Mm-hmm. I should have filed in federal court. But, I
lesson learned.
Lesson learned.
Vertical breathing after that incident. And it was fascinating, and I bring it up because we're getting new listeners with the new networks we're on, and they may not be aware of some of the things you've done in the past. So, if you want to search engine agenda31.org, search engine for restraining order, and you'll see some of the shows come up where we talked about that. So the rabbit hole, the tar baby, I should say, just gets busier and busier with people sticking their hands in the tar baby here with the California Highway Patrol.
It's that tar baby strategy is working. I mean, talk about getting a tremendous amount of mileage out of a citation. To be able to be in a position where I'm directly engaged with the entire organization, and the entire organization is in a very difficult position. I'm proud to have employed the low risk, high reward strategy, relatively low risk. I mean, to some people, driving around without plates and without a driver's license is considered very high risk. But, I think the risk reward for the level of game that is being played right now, I like the odds. It's a potential I could potentially, go to jail if there's a conviction. Remember, all of this has happened in a world where there has not even been a hearing yet for the citation.
And this being a citation the day before Thanksgiving in your PT Cruiser, the CHP, took your property, which you have gotten back, which we covered.
I was in it this morning. Yep. Yeah, I've gotten the PT Cruiser back. No plates. No, there's still no plates on it. I have become hooked on the scooter. I ride the scooter quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I am very happy to have the PT Cruiser back. And, that really hurt. They put the hurt on you when they take your car away. It's very difficult to make money. It's very difficult to get around, but it's part of the game. And with the support of listeners and staying focused on what the task at hand is, and that is to stay in the game and play to win. I am playing to win. What I want to win is not only recognition of being an Article 4 citizen, but the win comes in compelling the federal government to guarantee a Republican form of government to California, identified by its Constitution of 1849.
Oh, now I really see what's going on here.
I love that, Todd. You've been working.
Can't beat Eddie Murphy's voice.
Oh, now I really see what's going on here.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So the Highway Patrol's in a very difficult position, and they're going to have to make a decision. This is out there. It's in the ether. If anybody between now and they decide what they're going to do, if anybody gets pulled over by the Highway Patrol, if you are, issued a citation, if anything happens I'm looking at the chat room, Todd. Charles in Oregon put up there, asked if we saw the note about the 1868 rescission of the 14th Amendment. Yes, and that's been sent over to Todd, so we'll get to that later. Thank you for sending that, by the way. But getting back to the Highway Patrol, I have no idea what the solution is from their point of view. What do you do? If the entire organization is fraudulent from lack of filing their oaths, what do you do? This is an incredibly serious problem. Anybody who gets pulled over by the Highway Patrol, first thing I would do is send a letter off to the Secretary of State, ask for the oath of office for whoever it is that stopped you, and make sure that the Secretary of State gets you a certificate of no record, or some sort of. I've never gotten one from the Secretary of State. There's never been a time where I've tried to get a government official who has. I'm sorry, Pat, not Charles.
Yeah, Pat.
I got it confused.
No problem.
Thanks, Pat. Sorry about that. Oregon's really coming on. I get a lot of contacts from Oregon now, so that's I apologize. I've got a good memory. It's just really short. The Highway Patrol having to file their oaths. What do they do? I mean, last night I spent a lot of time thinking about this. The impact of this is really quite phenomenal. It affects every case that's pending right now throughout the entire state, every single case, because there is no way by the time I'm done with this that the Superior Court system of California can maintain plausible deniability that they don't know that the Highway Patrol is operating fraudulently. There is no way that that's not going to happen. I guess a couple of double negatives there. Hopefully you can interpret my lack of of command of the English language.
I'm just at a loss for words of how many times you've come up against the overlords of the California government, and they just boldface just say, we don't care about the rules. They don't apply to us. And
that's think the importance of getting this into federal court, and
your point about we need to get a clip of the CHP's intro phone message that says internationally acclaimed. In fact, let's go to their website. I just want to see that internationally accredited thing is important. I mean if that's how you're leading yourself in terms of identifying the nature of your organization. Imagine if you called up the county government, and the county government said, "We're an internationally accredited county." Really?
Right.
Wow. What's up with that? And that leads to ICLEI, which we've talked about, the International Council on Local Environmental Initiatives. That's an Agenda 21 front. A lot of counties and cities have signed up, and it has a charter where you suspend, the statutes of the city under the auspices of ICLEI's own sustainability plans, and it's well documented. That would be what a similar approach to ceding authority to a foreign power. Even this is we're in agreement that the state that we deal with, that's what we talk with in the opening intro of our show. At the very beginning of that clip, that 4 minute and 20-second intro, there is a segment where you talk about the state that we see is very different than the state that was formed. And that was you speaking to a CHP officer roadside a couple of years ago. That's where that clip came from. You were on the side of the road and you recorded your conversation with him. And that was an environment with an adversary that ended peacefully, ended with no coercion, ended with no theft, ended with nobody taking your property. And everybody walked away, somewhat more knowledgeable, hopefully. And that approach is important.
So I just sent you a link on Skype. It's to a document I found that's called an information bulletin Departmental School Bus Driver of the Year award from the Highway Patrol. And if you look at the bottom of that page, CHP 47 is the document number. It just says an internationally accredited agency.
Wow. Yeah. Fascinating. Yeah, I wonder what their website is.
Yeah, I don't see it on the website anywhere, but I'm sure we can find it. And, you know, that would be, well, here's a low-risk, high-reward activity for anybody who wants to get involved. Send a letter to the California Highway Patrol, a Public Records Act request for the accreditation of the Highway Patrol. I mean, I could do it. That'd be no problem, but I'd love to see somebody else do it.
Yeah.
You know, send a letter to the Highway Patrol and ask them for the documents related to their accreditation. Let's see if we can figure out exactly who it is.
Here we go. I'm at their About page. The CALEA accreditation. Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. The Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies was created in 1979 as a credentialing authority through the joint efforts of major law enforcement executive associations throughout the country. The primary purpose of CALEA is to improve the delivery of public safety services by maintaining a comprehensive body of law enforcement standards, establishing and administering an accreditation process, and recognizing professional excellence. Now, I don't have a challenge with being part of an accreditation. I mean, if it's best practices and professional standards, that's great. But maybe CALEA should have a whole learning track on filing your oath of office.
Right, yeah. I was going to say their accreditation really failed the CHP, you know, as far as following their own rules here in California. I'm not sure exactly what CALEA does.
It's the gold standard in public safety, Corey.
Yeah, I see that. The gold standard.
According to their website. And here's their commission. And International Association of Chiefs of Police, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, National Sheriff's Association, the NSA. We've dealt with them. We invited our sheriff. We invited him to come to the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Organization Bill of Rights training one year, and I was told unequivocally, no, I'm going to the NSA meeting so I can hear Homeland Security give a speech. So that shows you where, you know, clearly where those lines in the sand have been drawn. The Police Executive Research Forum. So I don't know. It's interesting they call themselves international. They're a 501c3. Professional staff manages an executive director. So why they claim they're international is interesting. They are in Gainesville, Virginia, it looks like. So they're in the orbit of the District of Criminals, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, we're never going to find something that says, hey, we're from Russia and we're going to appoint or create this accreditation. It's the people who have been involved in changing the nature of our government are smart. They are incredibly gifted. If you think about where this country was prior to the Civil War to where it's at now, these are some incredibly smart, powerful people who really understand how most humans think. Most humans, they get up, they go to work, they're trying to raise their kids, trying to pay their taxes, trying to do all this stuff that, damn it, I don't have enough time for it. And by not paying attention, when I say don't have enough time for it, I'm referring to the type of government, the citizen government that was originally created. People don't have time to donate, a year of their life to serve in government in a very thankless, low-paying job. Most people are just trying to keep a roof over their head. And that allows for the professional criminals to come in and be professionals at, destroying the country. And so you got to give them credit. You got to understand that the adversary is very, very capable. The adversary is very subtle. And it is, it's just something that caught my eye that they say over and over again that they are a internationally accredited organization. And the first thing I think of is what international body has an influence on this organization? Because if you're trying to become accredited through CALEA, and CALEA is very subtly creating standards that the entire CHP is shooting for, but those standards are contrary to the whole purpose of a state agency. people might not see that. Very honest and sincere officers in the Highway Patrol, which I've met many of them, would fundamentally really believe that what they're doing is a good thing and say, hey, look, we hit this accreditation. Look at how good we are. We worked hard to get our organization to be compliant with this. And this is the gold standard of law enforcement, and we hit it. The whole thing is, it's just taking your focus off the Constitution. That's the whole idea. If they can just keep your focus off the Constitution, keep your focus off of what it means to be an Article 4 citizen, keep your focus off of what the federal government's obligation is as far as guaranteeing a Republican form of government to California 1849, and instead focused on trying to jump through whatever hoops to be able to get that CALEA certification, what a tremendously effective, subtle way to begin to take the foundations of what secure the freedoms in this country and do that in a way that everybody just goes right along with it.
It's very insidious, frankly. And I just did a search at their website, that California Highway Patrol, for the word oath. And it came up with one link, and it links to a PDF, the 2015 Vehicle Code, which is a 1,000-page document. I just downloaded it to my laptop here, and I'm just going to find out. I mean, the whole website, the word oath, isn't found anywhere on the website.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, that speaks a little bit of volume there. And so they cite the vehicle. The vehicle code is in their search results. They've got it on their own server for 2015, and the word oath is in the document.
I just searched that. There's only there's 12 instances of the word oath in that document.
Yeah.
And in the definitions it says oath includes affirmation. That's what I found so far. Oaths and acknowledgments. I wonder if there's ever an oath of office. Oh, yeah, it just says members of the board shall take an oath of office.
I mean, and so let's rewind, too, while we're on this topic. You got a letter from the CHP that said, we have oaths of office, but we're not giving them to you, right? Am I accurate in this?
Yeah. In fact, I'll scan that and get that letter up. That's from it's from Romo. He was responding to me on behalf of the commissioner, that's Commissioner Farrow, who I wrote directly in regards to the issues here at the West Valley Division, because the West Valley Division, it was a very simple thing. I walked in to do an anonymous Public Records Act request at the West Valley Division. Now, obviously, they recognize me there when I come in, but so I'm not trying to hide who I am. I just don't need to tell them a name or any reason to pick up a document. And one of the officers came out. This is an officer that, I've seen a few different times when they're playing head games with me. A big, tall motorcycle officer. I forget his name off the top of my head, but all I'm requesting is a very simple document. I think it was like one of the procedures or something like that for tow policy at the Highway Patrol. And this officer comes out and just starts announcing my name in the lobby. Mr. Corey Ibe, Mr. Corey Ibe, as he's standing right over me. I mean, the guy's like 6'5" tall. He's the exact specimen of what you'd want to be in the Highway Patrol. I mean, he's a very imposing figure. And he's just announcing my name as I'm making a anonymous Public Records Act request.
Wow.
And I'm just like, in my head, the guy tried to shake my hand. I'm looking at him like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Wow.
Like all it was just pure intimidation.
Nervousness,
that's all it was.
too. Nervousness.
Yeah. And so I wanted to get a copy of his oath of office. You're going to announce my name as I'm making an anonymous Public Records Act request. Then, hey, I've got a podcast that I can announce your name. That's basically was my thought process. The guy didn't really do anything that would amount to filing a complaint or anything like that. And so all I did was write for a copy of his oath of office. Then the commander of the West Valley area, he sent me a letter that he tries to say, and we talked about it on the show, he tried to say, the oath of office in California is called the whatever. He sent me some other document. It looked like he just made it up. that was the. Do you recall what that was, Todd?
Yes, it was we've got it at the show. It's
it's on the show.
Oath oh gosh, we made fun of it because it was grammatically incorrect, as I recall.
Yeah,
and
well, the point was he sent that to me through the mail, and tried to claim that a government document that I requested, he made up something else and then gave that to me. That's fraud. I mean, that's just straight up fraud. So that was the basis of the mail fraud complaint. And a copy of that was then sent to the commander, the commissioner of the CHP, Farrow, saying, hey, all I did was a simple thing. I said, hey, here's a copy of my complaint to the U.S. Postal Service. Would you please contact Commander Starling and let him know that he needs to disclose this document? And that led to the response from Romo, who's the commander for internal affairs for the entire state, for him to just unilaterally declare a public document as being private. And so, I thought, well, gosh, I don't need to get the document from the Highway Patrol. They have it at the Secretary of State's office. So that's reason why I went to the Secretary of State's office. And here we are today now to find out that not one single oath of office is filed at the Secretary of State's office. And to the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware of any other entity that is able to file oaths for anyone whose authority is not limited to any county.
I'm going to find it. It's like oath of
fidelity.
Yeah, I forgot. It's like a team spirit type thing, and
right. It's like your alma mater kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's not signed or anything else. And
I know what to do.
And I put out on tweet that I got Twitter. Do you call it? I put out on Twitter. Okay, so I did a tweet with a picture of the letter that I got from Romo. And that was just, hey, the commissioner and Romo are conspiring to impair the obligation of a contract, because that's what an oath of office is. It is one part of a contract that is it is the highest level of contract available. And this to me is the genius of Abraham Lincoln, because Abraham Lincoln is the reason why the subscribed oath of office is law today, because it allows any citizen to be able to, well, not any citizen. At the time, it would have been any citizen, because there was no such thing as a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen when this first came to be, which was the requirement that federal officers sign a oath of office. And any citizen would be able to get that oath, create an acceptance, which is a very simple, just direct acceptance. Hey, I accept the oath of office of so-and-so effective such and such a date. And then you get a copy of it back to that person. Now it appears you'd have the ability, this is slightly untested, but you'd have the ability to sue under for breach of contract, because it's just a contract. That's what it is. It's the oath of office where the framers originally put together, where you stand up, hold your hand, you put your hand on a Bible, put your hand on the Quran, put your hand on a Kindle, put your hand on whatever it is that you want to put your hand on, and then hold your hand up and swear an oath. That's not a binding contract. That's just a ceremonial, display that
photo
between
op.
You and God, you're going to do this.
It's a photo op.
Yeah, photo op. But at the time when the framers put that together, that type of oath was something that was very important, and people would would take that very seriously. Today, not so much. And by the time the Civil War had come around, Lincoln's one of his most deepest concerns was not direct conflict with the South, but it was subversive agents within government. And so he did an executive order that said, hey, everybody has to sign this. If you don't sign it, you don't get paid. And, that's the importance of the oath of office. So for the Highway Patrol, man, I do not envy the position of the command staff at the Highway Patrol. And the low risk, high reward tar baby scenario is slowly inching its way to the governor.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's growing. And I'm looking at, you got the California Highway Oath Office Public Records package here. This might be it. And
you just sent me a text, huh?
Well, I just sent you a link to one oath that we got up on the board.
Got it.
Yeah. I wish I could remember that word that they used because they did send us a copy of it. I'll find it. Dang it.
Give me 1 second. I'll be able to pull it up. I've
Yeah.
got a file. There.
Oath no, it's an oath. It's a. I mean, we did a whole segment on a show about it because they were just showing you there was no signature on it. It was just a 8.5 by 11 example of this is what we say. This is our little club, that we deal with. And
hang on 1 second. I got it. It's like 10 feet away from me. I think I can find it.
Take your time. Agenda31.org is the website. You can subscribe there, complimentary. If you go to the subscription levels, there's other levels too. We'll get to that, but we've been getting more and more subscribers. We appreciate that. I think the Agenda 31 rebroadcast going out on other networks is very helpful.
Yes.
We appreciate that. And so, low risk, high reward, listeners, is what we try and talk about here on Agenda 31. And have you ever looked up an oath of office? Have you tried? I would start at the local auditor's office in your county, and you should become fairly familiar with your auditor. That can be their job is to audit the goings on of the government, and unless somebody checks in on them, nobody's really sure whether the auditor's auditing anything. And at least in our county here in Scott County, the auditor is the custodian of the oaths of office. And you can actually ask for their bond, too. There's a bonding that they do, that there's an amount paid by the taxpayers via the government to an insurance company. So in case somebody is sued or there's, I guess an elected official does something with damages somewhere, that bond is there to back up the damages. It's another whole story arc with regards to how a republic is guaranteed. I was told by our friend Drew in Iowa, Drew Knight, once, Corey, that years ago when people wanted to be sheriff or an elected judge or something like that they had to put up their own bond.
Yes.
That they had to put, they had to go pay their own premium out of their own pocket for the privilege of having that law enforcement authority. Thought that was pretty interesting. I don't have any evidence of that, but it sounds plausible to me in terms of a common sense.
Yeah, I think, in fact, I think that was prior to the current administrative government system that we have today. Right. Where if you're a citizen, serving in government, then you got it was an honor. It wasn't there to make money. It was an honor to be able to serve in that manner. So. Oh boy, I'm still trying to find, I can't believe I'm having such a hard time finding that because it's going to drive me nuts.
Well, it's like, it's very ADHD of me not to be able to find it.
Well, I'll get it for you,
to it,
before the show notes go up, and we'll be able to do
absolutely. So what else is happening out in California land? Did you got the 408 pages, I should say? That
yes, got the 408 pages that have come in there.
And that was a request for what again?
Well, that was a request for the documents surrounding the constitutional revision in 1972 that removed the boundaries of California. In the 1879 Constitution, they just cut and paste the boundaries from the old Constitution into the new Constitution, and then what a great way to fool everyone, because now there was no way for people in 1879 to realize that what they're putting together, what the government had just enacted, was a government where you have absolutely no protections from the federal government. Those boundaries were put in there and in a fraudulent manner. Then in 1972, nearly 90 some odd years later, the boundaries were removed, and then a reference to the 1849 Constitution was put in. Now, I got these documents yesterday, and I spent my lightning fast scanner does about 3 pages a minute, so it ran all night last night.
Wow.
So I haven't had a chance to really read through a whole lot of it, but some of this that I'm reading through is really quite fascinating. there is way more to this than what meets the eye. One of the quick things I found in there was somebody on the committee saying, there's a real problem with the boundaries because if the Colorado River moves, then that could create a problem between us and Arizona. So, we should just remove the boundaries from the state constitution. But what they did was they didn't just remove the boundaries. They just said, the boundaries are those stated in the 1849 Constitution. So the entire statement of that small little part that I read, it just smells of cover-up of why they were taking those boundaries out. And they did in one page. I've only been able to read through about 30 pages of this. In one page, they made mention that any changes in the boundaries of California would have to be approved by the federal government. And they're right.
Which we agree with. That's how you
totally agree with
admitted
that. Yeah.
To be one of the several states in the union, they would have to be approved. That would be
exactly. Yes. And it's not the boundaries of Washington, D.C. that they're changing. And that is the nature of the Constitution that is operating today is a Washington, D.C. Constitution. So, if you change the boundaries of Washington, D.C., that has no effect on an Article 4 state like California. And so in order to change the boundaries of California, you'd need to amend the 1849 Constitution. And I have a sense, I think, that this may have something to do with the state of Jefferson activity that was going on, where people in Northern California, really sick of Southern California and really tired of the way they were being treated, they want to form their own state. And this change by removing the boundaries from the 1879 Constitution, making reference to the 1849 Constitution, no matter what the people in the state of the people who are proponents of the state of Jefferson, no matter what they do, they could get all the signatures they want, everything. Now you can't modify the borders in the 1879 Constitution because there are no borders. And so it is a kind of it's a well-played trick on the part of the overlords to allow people to continue to do all their complaining, all the work and all the time and effort that has gone into the effort for the people who are trying to establish the state of Jefferson in Northern California. And it's all mute. If they're all 14th Amendment citizens, they are just spinning their wheels 100%.
Yeah, I'm at this page on this document, the ACA. I'm not sure what that stands for. Oh, I know what it stands for. It stands for the Assembly Committee on Constitutional Amendments. That's what that stands for. Assembly Committee on Constitutional Amendments. And I'm at ACA 42, Election and Reapportionment Committee from March 27th of 1972. And we're going to be able to get this up on the show notes. Are you okay with that?
Oh, yeah. That's the whole point of doing it there. It's
absolutely.
The way I was able to afford even paying for it was from, people helping out.
Yes.
So this is for everybody to be able to pour through these documents. There's 408 pages that'll be posted. And this is a public effort.
So it's got a section called Article 21, Revised Provisions Boundaries. And it's where they talk about the Colorado River. And they say, first, by specifying that a portion of the eastern boundary runs down the middle of the channel of the Colorado River, existing Section 1 fails to provide for changes in the course of the river and results in problems between California and Arizona concerning law enforcement, taxation, and general jurisdiction. This shortcoming finally had to be corrected in 1956 by enactment of existing Section 2, which, among other things, permits the legislature to change California's boundaries. That's maybe in an administrative state it could, and change the administrative boundaries. But anyway, this is definitely the opening of the Pandora's box here of the mystery of California's boundaries. And to recap for everybody, the current constitution that the state that everybody interfaces with, when we assert as the administrative division of the federal government known as the state of California, one of 50 of those administrative divisions. If you look at the CIA World Factbook map, it doesn't talk about the states. It talks about administrative divisions. We've talked about this many times.
Yeah.
That the interface that we're at, the entity that most people are interfacing with is the administrative division of D.C. called the state of California. That constitution they claim they're working under doesn't list any boundaries. It points to the California 1849 boundaries. However, it didn't start pointing to those boundaries until the 1970s. And this is the packet of information that's purportedly going to shed some light onto when and how and why that occurred.
Exactly. That was the purpose of requesting all of these documents, because it surrounds the constitutional change of removing those boundaries and then replacing it with a reference to the 1849 Constitution.
Low risk, high reward. And hopefully we'll have some high rewards list. I'll get this up at the show notes, Corey. Do you want to talk about any donors? Do we get any more donations?
Gosh, there was a couple of donations that came in, and between yesterday and this week, let me see if I can pull it up. There's a couple of small ones that came in, but I'm genuinely appreciative of those. I just didn't prepare this morning for making that list. I hope
we'll get it out next week. It's no problem. There's no new ideas under the sun. We do like to reward those who participate as much as we can, and part of that is if you subscribe at the website, you've become a subscriber to the blog, and therefore you get access to one restricted page, which is the page about common law ID. It's our only kind of, paywall is just to send us your email and subscribe, at the blog, so we can push out notifications of when we're going to be having a show and so forth. And then once you've done that complimentary subscription, you're already in the queue to subscribe via our PayPal interface that ties in with our subscription at this WordPress blog to numerous levels. And those include, if you just click on subscribe and support at the top of the page, it'll take you right to it. And they include the 3 double R's, $3.31 per month, $10.31 a month, the equivalent of 2 pints a month. How about one movie, taking a date to a movie and some popcorn, $31 a month? Can you contribute that? If you go to the movies all the time, maybe you can just set aside one movie and send us $31 a month to Agenda 31 to support the research and the efforts like you see Corey doing. Which is goes a very long way. You can make up your own donation level there, and we encourage people to find out when their state joined the union as one of the several states and make that year your monthly donation. If it joined in 1850, make it $18.50. 18 Federal Reserve notes and half a reserve note, I should say. So anyway, we'd like to throw some Article 4 karma out there to those that would have donated, and we want to continue to encourage everybody to support what they hear on Agenda 31. So thank you for that.
And just a side note, the baby karma from last week seemed to have been successful. I don't know if it's a little too presumptuous for us, but congratulations to Jared and his wife in Nebraska on the beautiful baby girl.
Well, I think she was coming no matter what, Corey.
Yeah, well, okay. Well,
9 months into it, I think it was already the pathway was certain.
So you don't think anything this new $2 bill I got had anything to do with it?
With her giving? Oh, you mean they wanted her to go into labor? Is that what you mean? Like, let's get it over with? Like,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I was just taking credit for the whole thing.
No, I don't think so.
Now, congratulations, Jared.
Yes.
That's
health and happiness
beautiful
to that
baby
family.
girl.
Absolutely. It's kind of funny to look at what's going on around you, and since you deal with the low risk, high reward efforts that you've taken, maybe moderate risk, high reward of having no license plates, and it's well documented as to how and why you did that. That we've proven that the automobiles we think we own are owned by the state. The master certificate of origin is in California destroyed. What you've learned, the actual original record of ownership is destroyed out there, and you've asserted and successfully received a exempt license plate because you've asserted that the birth record, which is the entity that's making the application for the license plate, is a government agency, is government property, and subsequently government property doesn't have, by penal code and by statute in California, doesn't have to pay for plates, much like the other administrative divisions called states around America here. And the whole license plate thing is a scam, as we all know. And I'll tell you, I had to read this one to you. Illinois is collecting more in license plate fines. Here's, I guess, an example of just stay asleep at the wheel, slave, and GovCo just gets bigger and bigger. In Springfield, Illinois, the AP is reporting in the latest twist of Illinois' financial crisis, the state is getting a windfall of $1.2 million and growing, thanks to its decision to stop mailing reminders to motorists to renew their license plate stickers. The income from the $20 late fines has more than doubled for the first 2 months of 2016, according to figures provided to the AP by the Secretary of State's office, which collects the fines. Drivers paid more than $2.7 million in fines from January 1 through February 22nd last year. This year they paid $2.7 million, and in that same time period last year, the state collected $1.5 million. So they're up over 1 million Federal Reserve notes just by not reminding the citizen slaves that their stickers are due.
Yeah. So the next step would be, hey, if we can make an extra $1 million doing this, what if we just send out a reminder that's wrong and tells you that you have to pay by 90 days after your date is actually due? How much money could we get then?
Yeah, that's the next step.
Illinois. The next step is just to tell you when to do it wrong so they can collect more money.
Oh yeah, and Illinois is in such dire financial straits because of the irrational and unrealistic pension expectations of a sprawling bureaucracy in the state. The pensioners and the government have gotten some kind of guarantee, and it's actually in the an amendment to the Illinois Constitution, which we assert is an administrative document, not the founding document from 1818, but nonetheless
it's a codified document.
The codified rules claim that the government employees shall have their pensions paid, meaning it's guaranteed, and so their pension plan, in many instances for government workers in Illinois, has a guarantee of an 8% ROI on the money markets they invest in. So if they put their money into some kind of fund, it's supposed to guarantee an 8% annual ROI. So, despite what the markets may do or not do, those Illinois workers feel they are entitled to 8% on their money, no matter what. And that's
because of the really good service they provide.
Yeah. Well, some of them do. Some of them provide very good service, but it's just to have this myopic view that I'm going to get 8%. No matter what, from where? From what? I mean, if it does, if the money market your pension fund is in doesn't return the funds because of the markets that they were invested in, the taxpayers are supposed to go, oh, your hedge fund manager made a wrong bet. Let me get my wallet out here. Hold on a second. Let me get my grandkids' wallet out. All right, let me get his kids' wallet out so you can make sure you get that guarantee.
And to see what kind of a ridiculous number 8% is. If you just type in financial calculator for future value in Google, just look future value financial calculator, start out with, 50 grand and put in 8% guaranteed every year and look at how much money that creates in 20 years. It's an insane number. Nobody in mass, the markets just don't do 8% every year. The idea that the markets do an average amount, that is completely a false number. The 8% is a ridiculously high guaranteed number. It's insanity. And all you have to do, like I say, just to see how crazy that is and how much you're on the hook in Iowa as far as Illinois, a taxpayer to be able to pay these guys, that it's
Illinois.
Insanity. Illinois, I'm sorry about that. Illinois,
yeah. We're neighbors. It happens. So I thought you would find that interesting about the license plate scam. Just another, hey, let's not send them a notice and we'll make more money.
Right.
I mean, does that help spell out Article or 14th Amendment citizens how you are perceived by these overlords? Truly, how you're perceived? Who's serving who here? It's clear they're not serving you at all.
Yeah, they just serve themselves. You look at the codes everywhere. It's all about serving Washington D.C. That's what has happened. That's the how they've devalued or debased the entire form of government, and they get to print up all the Federal Reserve notes they want. It is a government completely out of control. and a government who is its existence, the existence of the United States of America, is dependent on players from both sides, players that are adversaries, that is, players that are within the federal jurisdiction on the federal plantation. You need those players, but you also need players in the Article 4 section of the Constitution. Those are the two entities that are adversaries. If you're a 14th Amendment citizen, man, you're just cannon fodder for the game. That's it. You're just there to, keep the people at the milking parlor busy.
What do you propose? Shut down the black markets, take away what little they have, then double the amount of floggings and executions, put them on TV, broadcast them live. Sow fear, more fear.
It won't work. Fear does not work as long as they have hope.
And that's what we hope to do here on Agenda 31, everybody, is give you some hope that Article 4 citizenship is a pathway to hold the GovCo accountable.
I want everybody who is responsible for this fiasco to be held accountable.
Because
we are the last line of defense. And if we don't do it, nobody's going to do it.
So,
as we get, you've been busy, Todd. I love it, man. It's awesome. So
I could do ISO too. If you want to do some ISO, I'll throw some ISO down. Let's do it.
Nice.
ISO throwdown.
I think it's kind of funny. Starling here in the West Valley, he's the commander of the West Valley Division. You can really sense in this letter that he sent to me on January 19th, he refers to our website. And I think this is really interesting given the nature of the circumstances right now that he's operating without an oath. It says, additionally, a review of the material posted on your website in conjunction with the circumstances of your enforcement contact and the evidence examined during the complaint investigation indicate a malicious intent for filing the complaint.
Oh, really?
I'll post this letter.
Yeah, I have to see this. Wow.
I think
you didn't reference him to our website, did you? In your communications?
No. Nothing has been referenced on the website. They're paying attention.
Tell them we reference them all the time on the website, but in terms of your communications with the CHP, you've not referenced agenda31.org, have you?
No, the only time that referenced that was when Officer Smith, the supervisor who I called to protect the citing officer because the citing officer was committing a crime, in my opinion. He came out and I told him I'm a co-host of a podcast and, really nice. And I think I have the clip somewhere. We'll have to do it. He goes, agenda31.org. I went, yeah. And he goes, all right, I'll be listening. So I told him the only time I ever mentioned Agenda 31 was at the time of the site. But, obviously they sent a kid to try and buy marijuana from me. I'm sure they're listening to, phone calls. And
this is before you had business cards for Agenda 31 to hand out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I want to, last episode we played another clip about this guy giving a citation, right, for offending somebody. This clip right here.
So the job here is to write you up as a citation, disorderly conduct, for offending someone.
Write you up for disorderly conduct for offending someone. That's the job here. And I love the way you said it. Write you up as a citation.
Yeah.
Totally objectifying you as a piece of property. Just little does he even understand what he's doing there. And it just was, just pretty funny, actually. And what I wanted to point out, and I wrote down, was, you went down to the courthouse in L.A. and you were accosted verbally by some uniformed folks for filming, and there's like, no, don't you understand? We have rules. You can't film here. You're in violation. And
I wasn't even filming, actually. I was just looking to get still photos of the courthouse. Actually, no, I did get a couple of shots, just wide shots of the courthouse, just B-roll. I'm not looking for anybody in particular, just some B-roll of the courthouse.
And you had an exchange with them. You did a Freedom of Information Request Act or a Public Records Act request of the photo they took of you. What I'm getting at is, as an Article 4 citizen, one of the state citizens, you proved right there, albeit for a short moment, but you proved that no, I'm not in violation because this does not. That applies to administrative subjects that you guys overlord over, not me. And,
exactly.
And if there's, why shouldn't the people, the small p people of the several states be allowed to film, document the courthouse where all of this so-called justice is happening? What's the problem? What's the downside of recording the courthouse? So I forgot to bring that up last episode as we evaluated that whole dynamic of filming cops, and it still dawns on me. But that one guy getting arrested for taking a still photo of 20 cops getting ready to go into a frat house. What if he had sat down on the sidewalk with a clipboard and some paper and a number 2 pencil and started drawing them? What would that have done?
Right.
It just to get the total hypocrisy and the nonsense on the table. It's just it just boggles the mind.
I just put up on Basecamp that letter from Starling. So
okay, cool. I'll take a look at it. Well, there's lots to digest here in terms of what you've been able to produce, Corey, and through these Public Records Acts. We got to give this a look-see, and I'm trying to think, is there anything else we should be nailing down today?
I can't think of anything today.
Did you listen to Kurt Collenbeck's show that one night?
I did not.
Yeah.
I've not had.
I understand. Neither did I.
Time, but I will.
It's I want to give a shout out to another show that's played on the No Agenda stream. That's Rhino the Bearded's 00 show. He's a DJ and he spins music that is.
Ooh, I like the title of that.
Yeah, rhinothebearded.com is his website, and he spins tunes that are Creative Commons copyright. It's an alternative way to copyright things. It allows people to share more openly. It's outside of the grasp of ASCAP and BMI, the ones who police, playing copyrighted music and so forth. And this malicious intent thing needs to be looked at. I concur. I want to look at that real quick while we're on the air. I want to pull that up.
Yeah, well, what he's saying in that letter, which I think is quite fascinating, actually, is, well, we've done an investigation. This is what they do. Anything that I've come in, they say, well, we'll do an investigation on it. They wait 2 or 3 weeks, and they come back and said, we did an investigation. We found absolutely nothing wrong. Well, I mean, they said there's no factual basis for your allegations. I mean, on what planet do these people exist? The citation that the officer filled out is not a CHP citation. It is a form from the Judicial Council, and the Judicial Council has exact rules of how to fill that form out. That form becomes a complaint when you file it in court. If the form doesn't follow the rules, the complaint is a false document. I mean, it's as if they are so out of touch with reality that they feel like, well, we can just make it legal. We can do whatever we want. I mean, part of my motion to dismiss is pointing out that the document is a false document, conspired to be filed by 2 CHP officers. And it's false. I mean, it's materially a false document. Filing a false document with any competent authority in the state of California is a felony. It's like,
This is fascinating. I'm looking at. I'll put it up at the show notes at Agenda 31 for episode 71. He says, after a thorough and complete investigation, we determined Officer B. Miller and all other employees involved in this incident acted within the guidelines of departmental policy and applicable statutes. The investigation concluded there was no factual basis for your allegations. This was based upon the circumstances of the contact, which were captured on video and audio by officers at the scene. So that's an interesting divulgence there, that they have the audio and video. Thank you.
So
ring your bell, Corey. Ring that little $2 bell.
Oh, there we go. Here comes.
Yes. All right.
So this would be kind of fun. Any of the listeners, any of the fans of the Agenda 31 show, you can take the address. You can reference the file number on the letter. The address for the California Highway Patrol. Send them a Public Records Act request for the documents related to this investigation. I'd be curious to see who else can get that. I'm getting all of the documents through informal discovery. I've waited on doing the informal discovery because there was still documents going on or still contacts going on, and I've gotten until April 23rd before the hearing. But through informal discovery, I'll be able to get the video, get all the notes. I'll be able to get everything. But it'd be kind of fun to see if anybody else is able to get a copy of that, maybe post it up there, because the video will clearly show and the audio will clearly state, because I've got a copy of the audio as well. I made audio of the stop. The video is going to show there were no license plates on the car, yet the officers filled out documents that are designed to describe the car and did it fraudulently. You know, they can say, hey, there was no plates on the car, and then put in the notes section, the DMV returned information that these are the plates assigned to the car. But that's not what they did. They filled out the citation as if there were expired plates on the car. And that's a material difference from reality. I mean, they're just out of control. So, Starling, you have screwed your officers. As far as I'm concerned, the supervisor screwed the officer who was issuing the citation by not knowing what he was supposed to do. His job is to protect the officer, prevent him from making a mistake and committing perjury and then filing a false document. That's his job. If there's no driver's license, then how can a citation, according to the rules from the Judicial Council, it says the first, middle, last name must correspond with the driver license card. If there's no driver license card, you don't get a citation, you go to jail. That's how it works. And the officers, they didn't follow that.
But my father told me, someday, someone was going to have to take a stand. Someday, someone was going to have to say enough. This could be that day. Trust your senses, and don't look this bitch in the eye.
Time to take a stand, Corey.
Absolutely. And for all the honorable officers within the Highway Patrol, which there are a lot of them, man, I would be living pissed off at West Valley Division, because it's due to the behavior of West Valley Division that this has now escalated to affect every officer in the state of California. Every single officer is now, because I would have never even checked with, I mean, I should, because I talk about pulling oaths all the time, but had they just disclosed the oath of that one officer who came out and announced my name during a anonymous Public Records Act request, and I'm absolutely certain that it was Starling that sent him out to do that, all part of intimidation. They've followed me, they've positioned officers when I went to get a cup of coffee near there, just all these intimidation tactics, all based on, Captain Starling just whacking himself off to how much power he thinks he has and that he can do anything he wants and that it has nothing to do with the Constitution. If I were an honorable officer within the Highway Patrol, I'd be fucking livid at these people at West Valley Division for the trouble that they have caused. Now, the reality is this needs to be fixed. They need to have their oaths of office on file, and it needs to be a legitimate organization, because the Highway Patrol right now is fraudulent and illegitimate as an institution. But that did not come to light.
But that what?
That didn't come to light because of me searching for that. I honestly just assumed that, of course, they're going to have their oaths on file at the Secretary of State's office. It was beyond my comprehension that as an institution, an agency like the Highway Patrol, an internationally accredited agency like the Highway Patrol, would be in violation of such a fundamental requirement for them to be able to carry guns, badges, kill people, take your property away, do all these other things, that they would have their paperwork in order. And they don't.
Why do you think you engender so much loathing from them?
Because we hold them accountable to their contract, their oath of office. That is the minimum standard, everybody, that's out there. If you want to enforce the Bill of Rights, any right you can't enforce is no right at all, and it starts with that oath.
You see the chat room?
No.
So Luis, a friend of mine here, local here in right here in North Hollywood, he's applied for a passport, and his passport application was really interesting. He did it in a different manner. Well, they haven't issued his passport yet, and
it's all about the application.
He applied for a passport without using he applied for a passport using the direct standing of an Article 4 citizen right on the application. My application was done a little bit different. So I certainly applaud Luis for everything he does. He's definitely a tip of the spear Article 4 citizen here in LA. No plates on his car. He's taken the same risks as anybody else right on the tip of the spear. But he's got a trip where he's going from LAX to San Juan, Puerto Rico. And since they have not issued his passport yet, which, by the way, he paid all the extra fees for the expedited service that has now gone on, it's very late on that. So far, they haven't told him, no, they're not going to issue it. They've not done anything other than just delay. So he's going to be using his common law ID to fly from LAX to Puerto Rico, and he'll be recording the entire encounter with TSA. So
that's awesome.
Kudos to Luis. Can't wait to get those recordings. And, you see people all over the place. Oregon coming online with people researching and really digging into the history of Oregon. I wish the people in Nevada would wake up and really start looking at the Enabling Act. I sent another letter off or an email off to Oath Keepers. They're having an emergency conference call coming up where they're going to be talking about all these what they call unconstitutional land grabs in Nevada. And that is also associated with quite a few people have been arrested that were related to that Bundy Ranch incident out there. Man, read the law, understand how Nevada came into the union, because normally it's the people that petition the federal government for statehood, but Nevada was the opposite. It was the federal government petitioning the people to become a state. Even though they didn't meet the qualifications, it was done under an emergency act of Abraham Lincoln trying to protect all the silver resources out in Nevada and prevent the South from being able to take them. And so just really good news all over the place of people looking at this entire situation of an out-of-control federal government and its administrative divisions, looking at it from a different point of view, stepping out of the plantation and now standing on Article 4 citizenship and engaging government from that point of view is really quite exciting.
I keep forgetting to bring up the one of the other potentially useful ways to remember what Agenda 31 is about. It's a little goofy, but why not go for it? 3 + 1 is 4, and we're talking about Article 4 citizenship.
I love it.
It's part of the Agenda 31.
Right. You look a little tired. You tired?
No, not at all.
No? You good?
Yeah, I'm a little tired, Corey. So we're gonna wrap this up here. And I was giving a shout out to another podcast that's replayed on the No Agenda stream. That's Rhino the Bearded. He plays all this great music. I encourage everybody that enjoys independent music, everything from hip hop to jazz to country to rock. He's got it on there, and it's the 00 Show. And I was listening to it this morning. He has a great tune. I'm going to play that at the end of our podcast today. It's a band called G8, and it's album called Run With It, and the song is called From the Basement. Corey, any parting words for our listeners? We appreciate everybody checking in on the chat room there very much. It's turned out to be a nice little feature.
Yeah, in fact, this is the first time I've ever seen the chat room completely full. I've seen a couple of notices where it just says full. So right now we've got 8 online, but on the notes I get a couple of times, it just says full. So that's pretty cool.
I didn't know there was a governor on it. I guess I need to pay some more money for that chat feature. That makes sense.
And then Rhino the Bearded, is that RYNO?
Yes,
the Bearded?
RhinoTheBearded.com. Cool. Yeah, that would be it. And we appreciate everybody checking out agenda31.org. This has been episode 71. And we encourage you to ask yourself, what is my strategy to make a difference?
the code that can make a quest stop or fold. No, I ain't trying to boast to tell you what's garbage or gold. I just got questions at most. We get so low, it's past below and can't be touched by the status quo. Now don't feel outcasted or asked to go. Let's talk about it while we walk and roll. From all the street gate, the kids that think and bleed gray, with wandering eyes that never ever see straight. Always conscious, analyzing their environment. Never had so many misrepresentations been inspiring. The sound out loud is fire within. It can't be explained like trying to describe the wind. We like to think of ourselves as cool guys and just to go together like private school ties and Tim's. Kind of a clash if you ask Fab, Mike, or Chris, but held together when I rhyme like this. Wrote it down, watching people die in the wind. Spoke it out, watching people surviving to live. We're throwing out the kitchen sink plus the dishes, replacing the fridge and renovating the kitchen. Got a new style, same sound, same message, and letting that chill while I hit the cold back. The hip-hop, the creme de la creme, underground of the underground, the us and them, lost side of the cause, now we fight amongst ourselves, and if somebody points it out, we raise hell, became afraid to change, soon as we gave it a name, focused on differences instead of how we're the same, my brown skin pronounced as half a round trip, born with an identity that I haven't found yet, while the 8 richest countries connect now and then to discuss the rate at which the global spin, occupying the third world, the ghetto urban, colonized the prize but they didn't get the job done, emerging from the basement, a house party antics, keg standing, fashion and dirty dancing, 8 sub-heroes, speaking through the speakers, blasting, even after the cops try and crash you.
I want everybody who is responsible for this fiasco to be held accountable. We are the last line of defense. And if we don't do it, nobody's gonna do it.
Oh, now I really see what's going on here.
The job here is to write you up as a citation, disorderly conduct, for offending someone.
What do you propose? Shut down the black markets, take away what little they have, then double the amount of floggings and executions, put them on TV, broadcast them live. So fear, more fear.
Tell them keep the coffin. Might think it's common to sleep that often, but good rest depends on the streets you're walking out. My shut eye, the way your fleet keeps talking, seeking profit. Plans to flee the project, speaking nonsense, mention needs for one kids. It's not synonymous, but hey, feed your wants, kid. We're gonna sit here and watch you lose every bit of sanity, trying to keep you cool, kid. I still make my bed on a broken rulers. I'm a bad example to tell you what to do, kid. Nonetheless, I seen smart run foolish. From Franks to Franklin, rich kids go stupid. Policemen fuming, poor people confused it. You might wind up having to speak through a microphone with 7 kids from the school of music, rocking basements, keeping it moving.
Subscribe, share, and support at agenda31.org. .org, 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 .org,